YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook will not allow these discussions to occur. For the past week, I've been locked out of both my YouTube and my Twitter accounts. They claimed that I violated their community guidelines, which means that I presented factual, well-documented information which went against their agenda. President Kennedy said, "A nation that's afraid to let its people judge the truth and falsehood in an open market is a nation that is afraid of its people." A few years ago, YouTube and Twitter introduced something they called community guidelines. Originally, they said the purpose of this was to prevent terrorism and child pornography. But it quickly degenerated into an excuse for arbitrary censorship by their staff. The good news is that there are much better platforms for communication than YouTube and Twitter. And the only reason I'm still here is because this is where most of my subscribers are. But with their censorship policies, YouTube is no longer a useful platform for me. I will only be posting very limited content here in the future. Most of my work will only be visible on other platforms, which are linked to in the description of this video below. I hope that you will subscribe to one or more of those platforms. I ran into an incredible example today of how community guidelines are being abused by the press. Almost 22 years ago, the Independent newspaper ran this article. Snowfalls are now just a thing of the past. They said that it doesn't snow anymore in Britain because of global warming. Dr. David Viner, a senior research scientist at the Climatic Research Unit, said, "Children just aren't going to know what snow is." And this story was published in the Independent yesterday. It looks to me like these children actually do know what snow is. So I posted this comment in the article. It's been almost 22 years since the Independent ran this headline, "Snowfalls are now just a thing of the past." And I posted a link to the article in the web archive because the Independent has deleted the original article. They said that my comment appears to violate their community guidelines and has been deactivated. So apparently one of their community guidelines is that you can't post embarrassing articles which they printed in the past. The censorship behind community guidelines was introduced with very lofty-sounding ideals, but it quickly and very predictably degenerated into an excuse to censor for any reason. George Bernard Shaw said, "All censorships exist to prevent anyone from challenging current conceptions and existing institutions." Frederick Douglass said, "To suppress free speech is a double wrong. It violates the rights of the hearer as well as those of the speaker. It is just as criminal to rob a man of his right to speak and hear as would be to rob him of his money." Noam Chomsky said, "Censorship is never over for those who've experienced it. It's a brand on the imagination that affects the individual who has suffered it forever." And President Kennedy said, "Without debate, without criticism, no administration and no country can succeed and no republic can survive." Via their censorship, YouTube and Twitter have made themselves obsolete and useless moving forwards.